The village that doesn't appear on any map. I have told this story to exactly 3 people in my life. 2 of them stopped speaking to me after. The third one listened to the whole thing without a word, and when I finished, she simply said, "I believe you." Then she got up, walked out of my apartment, and never called me again. I don't blame any of them. If someone had told me what I am about to tell you, I probably would have done the same thing, because there is a version of this story that sounds like a dream, and there is a version that sounds like madness. But I was there. I drove through that valley. I slept in that house. I sat at that table and looked into the eyes of people who should not have existed the way they existed. And I have spent the last 4 years trying to convince myself that I imagined it. I haven't succeeded. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that in the autumn of 2019, I was driving alone through a part of rural Vermont that I had no real reason to be in. I was 31 years old. I had just come out of a long relationship that ended badly, the kind of ending where neither person is entirely wrong, but both people are entirely destroyed. I had taken 2 weeks off work, thrown a duffel bag into the back of my car, and started driving north with no specific destination. That was the first decision I made that I wish I could undo. Not because driving north was the problem, but because when you are running from something emotional, when you are lonely and untethered and looking for something to fill the silence, you make choices you wouldn't normally make. You turn down roads you wouldn't normally turn down. You follow your instincts when your instincts have been broken. I had been driving for about 3 days by the time I found myself on a route I didn't plan. I'd been using my phone for navigation, but the signal had been cutting in and out since I crossed into a more forested part of the state. I wasn't worried. I figured I'd find a main road eventually. Vermont isn't exactly a wilderness. There are towns every few miles, small ones, quiet ones, but towns all the same. I drove for nearly 40 minutes without seeing a single building. The road I was on had started fine, 2 lanes, paved, a little narrow, but nothing alarming. But somewhere in the last 20 minutes, it had changed without me noticing. The pavement had become patchy, then cracked, then something close to gravel pressed flat by years of use. The trees on either side had grown closer. The afternoon light was thinning in that particular way it does in October, where you think you have more time than you do, and then suddenly the world goes gray. My phone had no signal, not one bar, not even the little circle that spins when it's searching. I told myself it was fine. I had half a tank of gas. I would find a town. And then I came around a long curve in the road and saw the village. It sat in a low valley, the kind of place you wouldn't see until you were almost on top of it. Maybe 30 or 40 buildings, a main street of sorts, houses set back from a dirt road, smoke coming from chimneys, warm light in windows. It looked like something out of an old photograph, the kind of New England village you see on calendars, unchanged and impossibly preserved. I felt something when I saw it. I want to be honest about that. I didn't feel dread, not at first. I felt relief, and something else I can only describe as a kind of quiet pull, like the place was familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I drove down the valley. The main road through the village had no markings, no street signs I could see. The buildings were old, but well-maintained, white painted wood, dark shutters, stone chimneys. There was a building that looked like a general store, a small church at the far end of the road, and what appeared to be an inn or guest house about halfway down on the right. There were people outside. Not many, maybe 8 or 10. a man carrying firewood near one of the houses, 2 women talking near the store, an older man sitting on a bench outside what looked like the inn. They were dressed simply, practically, nothing theatrical about them. They looked like ordinary rural people going about an ordinary afternoon. But as I drove slowly down the main road, they all stopped what they were doing and looked at me. That isn't unusual. A strange car rolling into a small town gets noticed. I've experienced that before. What was slightly unusual was the quality of the looking. It was very still, very even, the way you look at something when you're not sure what it is yet. I parked in front of the inn and got out. The older man on the bench watched me approach. He looked to be in his late 60s, a heavy wool jacket, big hands resting on his knees, a calm, weathered face. I asked if the inn had rooms. He said it did. I asked how much for one night. He said a name, a price that was so low it should have been strange, but I was tired and relieved, and I didn't think about it the way I should have. His name was Edmund. He took me inside. The inn was warm. It smelled of wood smoke and something faintly sweet, like bread or apples. There was a small front room with a counter, a narrow staircase, and a parlor off to the side where a fire was going. Edmund showed me to a room on the 2nd floor. Simple, clean, a single bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over the back of the building toward a tree line. I thanked him. I asked the name of the village. He said the name. I won't repeat it here because I have looked for it many times on maps, on satellite images, on historical land records for that part of Vermont. It doesn't exist. Whatever name he gave me belongs to nowhere that anyone can find. I unpacked a few things, washed my face, and went back downstairs to ask about food. Edmund was in the parlor. A woman was in the kitchen, and she brought out a bowl of soup and bread without being asked, as if she had known I was coming. She was perhaps 40 years old, with pale eyes and a slow, deliberate way of moving. She set the food down in front of me and looked at me for a moment with that same still quality I had noticed in everyone outside. I thanked her. She nodded and walked back to the kitchen without a word. I ate. The food was good. The fire was warm. I told myself I had gotten lucky, finding a quiet place like this on a random road. After dinner, I went back to my room and tried my phone again. No signal. The battery was at 60%, and I decided to save it rather than drain it trying to find something that wasn't there. I would figure out the signal in the morning. I was too tired to worry about it. I slept deeply, more deeply than I had slept in weeks. When I woke, it was morning, full daylight, and the village outside my window was exactly as it had been the evening before. Quiet, still, smoke from chimneys, the sound of distant movement. I went downstairs. Edmund was at the counter. He looked exactly as he had the night before, the same clothes, the same expression. He looked up when I came down and said good morning. I said good morning. I asked if there was coffee. He said there was. I sat in the parlor again. The same woman brought coffee, then breakfast without being asked. I noticed she was wearing the same clothes she had worn the night before. I didn't think much of it. Some people in small towns wear the same things for days. I'm not a person who judges that. I drank my coffee and looked out the window. 2 children were playing in the road outside, a boy and a girl, young, maybe 7 or 8. They were tossing something back and forth between them. I watched them for a moment, the ordinary comfort of watching children play. And then one of them stopped and looked directly at me through the window. That happens. Children are curious. But the way this child looked was wrong. Not wrong in a way I could name immediately, just wrong. Too still, too long. The way an adult looks at something, not a child. There was no curiosity in it. There was more like assessment. I looked away. I finished my coffee. I asked Edmund if there was a way to get back to the main road.
He gave me directions, straightforward ones: left at the church, follow the road north for about 4 miles. He said it like someone who had said it before. I thanked him and went upstairs to pack. I want to tell you what made me stay, because I did stay. I stayed a second night, and that was the decision I cannot stop turning over in my mind. The reason was this. When I came back downstairs with my bag, I stopped in the parlor to put on my jacket, and I found a book on the small table by the fireplace. It was old, cloth-bound, with no title on the spine. I opened it out of habit. I am the kind of person who opens books. It was handwritten inside, in neat, careful script. The first line read, "We have found that memory is a kindness we cannot afford." I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because of where I was in my life at that moment. A failed relationship, a long drive away from everything familiar.
I was the kind of person who was carrying too much memory at that time, who would have given almost anything to put it down. That line felt like it was written for me. I sat down. I kept reading. The book was strange. It was part journal and part something harder to describe. The entries had no dates. They spoke about the village, about its rhythms, about the way the seasons worked there. One passage talked about how the people of the village had made a kind of peace with time, that they had learned not to carry their days forward, because carrying days forward was the source of all human suffering. They called it the releasing. Every night they released the day. They woke fresh. They did not remember yesterday. They did not remember yesterday. I should have put the book down. I should have picked up my bag and driven out of that valley and never looked back. But I kept reading. By the time I looked up, it was afternoon. Edmund was in the doorway of the parlor, watching me with that still expression. I asked him about the book. He said it belonged to the house. I asked him what the releasing meant. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said quietly, "You should stay another night. The road is difficult after dark." I stayed. That second night is when everything changed. I went to bed later than the first night. I had spent the evening in the parlor watching the fire, thinking about the book. Around 10 o'clock, I heard movement outside. I went to the window. The entire village was awake. Every person who lived there was outside, all of them standing in the road, facing the small church at the end of the street. The 2 children were there. Edmund was there, the woman from the kitchen, everyone I had seen since I arrived. They were standing completely still in a loose group in the cold dark, and they were all facing the same direction. Not one of them was moving. I watched for several minutes. Nobody spoke, nobody shivered, nobody shifted their weight or looked around. They stood the way statues stand, with that particular stillness that belongs to things that are not alive. Then, almost simultaneously, they all closed their eyes. And then they opened them and turned and walked back to their homes. I stepped back from the window. I sat on the edge of the bed. My heart was hitting so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself it was a religious ritual, some kind of communal prayer. Small, isolated communities do strange things. It's not my place to judge. I did not sleep. In the morning, I was already dressed and packed when I heard Edmund downstairs. I came down quickly, my bag in my hand, and I said I was leaving. He looked at me. The same face, the same clothes, the same expression as the first morning, as the second morning, as every moment I had seen him. He said, "Good morning." He said, "Would I like coffee?" And I understood in a way that came slowly and then all at once, like cold water, that he didn't know I was leaving. He didn't know I had been there for 2 days. He didn't know we had spoken before. He was greeting me for the first time. I said, "No, thank you." I walked out. I got in my car. The village was already moving in its morning way. Smoke from chimneys, people outside, the man with the firewood, the 2 women near the store. Everything exactly as it had been the first afternoon I arrived. Every single person in the same place, doing the same thing, wearing the same clothes. And then I saw the children. The boy and the girl in the road, tossing something between them. I watched for a moment, and the girl stopped and looked at me through my windshield. The same look, the same assessment. I drove. I followed the directions Edmund had given me, left at the church, north for 4 miles. The road was rough but passable. After 20 minutes, I hit pavement. After another 10, I found a junction with a route number on a sign, and my phone found signal immediately, 3 bars, then 4. I pulled over. I sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel for a long time. Then I looked up the village. I searched for the name Edmund had told me. I searched for villages in that part of Vermont. I found nothing. I searched the coordinates from my phone's location when it finally locked, but it placed me on a blank section of map with no roads labeled, no towns named, nothing. I drove for another 2 hours before I stopped for gas. When I went inside to pay, the woman at the counter asked me if I was all right. I said yes. I asked why. She said I looked like I hadn't slept. I hadn't. But more than that, I think I looked like what I was. Someone who had seen something they couldn't file away. Someone trying to put language around an experience that doesn't have any. I drove home. I didn't stop again. The weeks after were not good, not because of anything dramatic. Nothing followed me, no strange occurrences, no shadowy figures, just the ordinary world and me inside it, unable to settle back into it properly. Because here is what I kept thinking about. The book, the line about memory being a kindness they couldn't afford, the releasing. Every night they released the day. They didn't carry their yesterdays forward. And I had watched them do it, standing in the road in the cold and the dark, all of them together, letting it go. And I had been so ready, so desperate to let my own days go. That relationship, that long grief, all of it. I had read that book for hours and wished I could do what they did. But here is the thing that I cannot stop sitting with. The children in that village were young, 7 or 8 years old. They had been there for years, presumably, living in that village, growing up in it. But if they released every day, if every morning they woke up without yesterday, without any of it, had they ever actually grown up? Had any of them? Edmund with his big hands and his weathered face, how long had he been 68 years old? How long had he been waking up in those same clothes, in that same inn, saying good morning to whoever came down the stairs as if it were the first time? How many people had driven into that valley, tired and lonely and looking for somewhere to rest? How many of them had stayed? I check the route sometimes. I go back over my drive on the map and try to find the turn I made, the road that took me down into that valley. I've never found it. The geography doesn't support it. There is no valley where that valley was. But I remember the smell of that parlor, the weight of that cloth-bound book in my hands, the fire. I remember the feeling of being somewhere that wanted me to stay. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep and the room is very quiet, I think about what would have happened if I hadn't left. If I had stayed a 3rd night, and then a 4th night,
And if one morning I had woken up and not remembered the road that brought me there, not remembered the relationship I was running from, not remembered my name or my apartment or my life, would I have stood in the road with the others that night, in the cold and the dark? Would it have felt like peace? I think about the girl who looked at me through the window, through the windshield, that still, patient look. I think she had done it before, watched someone drive away. I think she watches every morning to see if they come back. I think some of them do.